What was your biggest challenge, Elliott, in buds? Leif said it was keeping your mouth shut.
That's still his challenge.
Yeah. That's what I'm surprised with you, Joe. Like, for someone that didn't grow up in the water, didn't grow up on the swim, to win swims is a big deal. Like, that's a big deal. That's challenging.
I spent a lot of time in the water. So I've always been comfortable in the water and I've always been good swimming. So I started doing Ironman. So I did 5 Ironman before I went to buds.
Damn, dude.
As a disclaimer, I did them all in 1 year. So I got trained up, just started crushing them.
Freaking epic.
But I think for me, to boil it down, the hardest challenge for me is I was 27 in buds. So those are dog years. Anything over 25 is dog years. So those young kids are, they'll go get beat up during the day and then they go out and drink at night. Yep. I'm like icing and like, okay, it's not the same.
Fast forward a little bit. So you guys get done with buds. Elliott, you say after that, so you get done with buds. After that, I got my jump wings at Fort Benning, Georgia. It was back to Coronado so I could get my trident, which I did in May of 2003. Since I was a corpsman, I had to go back across the country yet again for my additional medical training at Fort Bragg, North Kakalaki, for about another 6 or so months. So after that, I got sent back to Coronado to Team 5 and was assigned to Bravo Platoon, where I did 2 platoons, the first of which was split. The first part we did PSD for the interim VP of Iraq. And yeah, that sucked. But that only lasted a couple months because then we got slotted to go to PACOM. We left Iraq and headed to Guam. And so this is how you knew Leif. Were you in buds with Leif too? So you guys were in buds together. And I think Leif actually knew that when you were at medical school, he kind of talked and figured out a way to get you put into his platoon with Zowie and Ray. And so you guys got a little core group of new guys in there. Were you a new guy in that platoon too?
Yeah. This first platoon.
Yep.
Yes, sir, Bob. That's right.
You guys had a good little crew then. You say from there, I'd gone to Thailand, South Korea, and finally to Singapore. Also, whilst in Guam, I was heloed down to the USS San Francisco. It was a submarine that had actually hit an underwater sea mountain, and one of the crew had smashed his head into something, and in doing so, that pretty much killed him, but that doesn't mean I didn't try everything I could to save him, up to and including giving him a tracheotomy. But that was to no avail. So I had to pack him up and send him off to get pronounced dead. So this was a interesting event that took place. It was 8th January 2005. The USS San Francisco was going max speed, and I think that's classified, but it's fast. And it hit a damn undersea mountain that wasn't on the charts, and it was at a depth of 525 feet. They almost lost the vessel. Mm-hmm. It was and I was looking at pictures of it yesterday. Yeah. Like, it was all jacked up.
Oh yeah.
It looked like a car getting in a head-on collision going 50 miles, or probably 45 or 50 miles an hour. That's how bad it looked. Were you the only guy that went on, or did you send all the medics you had?
No, we also got the group dive medical officer down there too.
Got it. Ultimately, like you said, machinist mate 2nd class Joseph Ashley, 24, of Akron, Ohio, was killed in that tragedy. And so he's a medic. What was your job in platoons, in your first platoon?
So because I was so senior, I was in E6 going through buds, so I eventually became the LPO in my first platoon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
When you say eventually, did someone make chief or?
No, so our LPO got relieved.
Got it.
Yeah, so I just kind of took over.
That's pretty impressive to step up.
But that was all because I believed that the seas were too rough.
Yeah.
So I started off as first lieutenant.
Got it.
So I was running first lieutenant, and then eventually, I just took over the LPO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big step, man.
Yeah,
to go from new guy to LPO.
Yeah.
How'd the boys like that?
So the interesting thing is, we're talking about the core guys. All of us new guys that got there, we were new to the SEAL teams, but none of us were new to the military. Mm-hmm. So everybody had some, life experience and military experience. So there was a lot of maturity there. To be honest, I think the core group getting there had more maturity than some of the older guys. And, to be honest, it's 100% true. So the core, we all there was not a power struggle. I think when the LPO was relieved, I think everybody was kind of, you know how it is, like you have that person, everybody already knows they need to be relieved. Yep. And then once he was relieved, it was kind of like this sigh of relief. And the 2 senior guys we had, was really one senior guy, they didn't want the responsibility, you know, so they were kind of like all about just, you know, falling in line.
Yeah. The dynamics in a SEAL platoon, and now that I've seen so much leadership in so many different organizations, it's like if someone is stepping up, if there's a leadership vacuum and someone steps up and is going to make things happen and they're listening, they're not being arrogant, it's like it works fine. In fact, that's what officers do, right? Yeah. The junior officers, they don't have any experience and yet they're supposed to step up and lead, and as long as they do it and humble and they listen, they take advice, like it works.
Yeah, I felt like it was, you know, the guys want leadership and they don't care where it come from. Yep. So it didn't have to have the experience, because I certainly didn't have the experience, the team experience, but I had leadership experience from being in the Seabees for so long. So,
and that first deployment, you guys did half the time in Iraq doing PSD and half the time in Guam doing exercises. Yep. And I know Leif was telling me that he and a couple other guys, and Elliott was one of them, went up to Samara and did some sniper operations. Nothing really huge, great happened, but he was at least excited to be able to do that. Did you get in on some DAs at least or something like that?
In Iraq?
Yeah.
So unfortunately I did not, because I eventually, me and Kevin Cady, our OIC, we took the principal. He was from London, so we did a whirlwind tour of London and Saudi Arabia and all these places, but we moved the platoon over to where they could do DAs at Team 3, because Team 3 was deployed at the same time that we were there doing PSD.
Right on.
So they got to go do some DAs.
So you were like doing full on just diplomatic, wearing a suit, the whole 9 yards.
Yes, yes. But it was, it wasn't too bad, because we got to some countries like, England. You just turn them right over to Scotland Yard, and we're just off, just like hanging out. So
dude, that's crazy. You had a freaking weird career. Like that's weird.
Super weird.
Doing the freaking golf course thing.
I know.
and now you're going to London.
It gets weirder.
We
peel it apart. It gets weirder.
Oh, dude. So you guys get done with that deployment. You get home, Elliott, you say, after I got done with my first platoon, I'd gone to sniper school as well as some other schools, and then deployed to Iraq in the fall of 06, where we were supporting the Army's 1st Brigade, 1st Armored Division, providing sniper overwatch. You say, now this is where things get funky, because I don't have any kind of recollection of what happened to me on my alive day. The last memory I have of Iraq is that of my room and all the pornographic photos I had up on my wall in my little cubby. Nothing of any missions that I had gone on, and especially nothing, and I mean zero recollection of the day when I was blowed up. So they say that it'll come back, but I'm not buying it. Just because Joe Hildebrand, who was also injured, though not nearly to the extent that I was, has told me the story probably a dozen fucking times, and then I'll just forget. Yeah, dude, TBI is a real fucking bitch. I want to talk a little bit about preparing for Ramadi as you guys are getting ready to go there. As I mentioned earlier, and I didn't really think too much about this while I was in Ramadi, that our after actions reports, like one of my buddies, when I got back, he's like, dude, we were reading those things to the command daily. Yeah. What was that like for you? Like, as you're hearing the shit that's going on and you guys know where you're going.
So I can probably speak for the whole platoon at the time. We were reading that stuff, and it was the most real anything had ever been in our lives, because we know what we were preparing to go do, and there was no shortcuts. We were honing our skills. We were sharpening our knives, learning how to keep our powder dry every single day. And it was not, ULT was a whole new beast for us at the time, because, we'd taken diving out. We just whittled it down to what really is important. And then we were taking that time for sit, which it wasn't called sit back then, but we were taking that integration time to really hone down on what we were learning from your after action reports, and to try to be as mentally and physically and tactically prepared as we possibly could be. And even for the rest of my career, I don't know, you always think, even as a platoon chief, I was trying to focus my platoon on what really matters, but that was a time where you were really paying attention to every little detail.